there. Welcome back to my channel. This is Detroit Allycat, and today we're going to talk about a little bit of some spooky things. It's been a while since I've talked about spooky things, so let's dive right into it. Let's get spooky. That's what I used to say. Have you ever heard the story of the Muffin Man? I know that sounds kind of odd, but the other day I was making breakfast and I turned to the person that was in the kitchen with me and I said, "Do you know the Muffin Man?" Because the person was grabbing a muffin. And they said, "Do you know the story of the Muffin Man?" And I thought, yeah, it was on a cartoon in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. I don't remember. When I was a kid, it's been a while. And they said, "Yeah, but do you know the real story of the Muffin Man?" And I said, I don't know. And they said, "Well, the Muffin Man was a serial killer that used to kill kids." And I thought, I have never heard that story before. Have you ever heard of the Muffin Man being a serial killer that used to kill kids? So I looked it up, and it's true. Well, it's sort of true. There's a lot of controversy regarding the Muffin Man, and I will tell you why. So you can make up your mind if you believe in the Muffin Man or not. I think what's really interesting is when you look at some of these old nursery rhymes or old little songs that they sing, like "Ring Around the Rosie," "Pocket Full of Posy," they all turn out to be these crazy, gruesome stories, and this is no different. So we can decide if it's a nursery rhyme, the first documented serial killer, or it's an old wives' tale for kids to be good or not. Either way, let's jump into it. Okay, so I did some digging because I thought, let's talk, I need to figure out about this Muffin Man. The story that I was told is that it was a guy that used to lure kids into a cave with a muffin. That's what I was going on. So immediately I just went and I Googled it, and sure enough, there was stuff about a serial killer Muffin Man. I'll tell you what I found out about. I found out about it. It was back in Old England, London. And around that time, it was around the 1600s, 1500s, 1600s. They did not have ovens in their house, which, that makes sense, right? They didn't have electricity, but I thought for sure that they had fires and kettles. But the hot commodity back in the day was baked goods, because they couldn't bake bread, which I guess there's got to be a specific way to bake bread. You put the bricks together and you shove it in there. I've seen those old style pizza ovens, and I'm thinking that's probably what that's like. And so I guess there would be these people that would walk around door to door, and they would sell different types of baked goods, like bread and muffins. And there was a one particular guy that used to sell stuff, and he was very competitive. And when I talk about muffins, I'm not talking about the American muffins. I didn't know that these were American muffins. American muffins are those big fluffy things that look like cupcakes. They got chocolate in it, blueberry, but the English muffins, which happen to be my favorite, are those flat, round ones that you put butter and preserves on, and they're really good. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the English muffins, which would make sense because we're in England, right? And around that time, and the time I'm talking about is 1589 to 1598, there was a name of a man, and it was Frederick Thomas Linwood. And he happened to be a very competitive baker. And the story of the Muffin Man, which is kind of interesting, is it's the Muffin Man of Drury Lanes. And I've actually never even heard of Drury. The only time I've ever heard of it is they have these hotels called the Drury Hotels. And so that's the only time I've ever heard of Drury. But actually, in England, there is a place called Drury Lanes. And in order for you to kind of understand this, I have to tell you about it. So back in the day, like they would have like these areas where they would have like pubs and theaters, and that was very popular back then. They didn't have movie theaters. They had like theaters where they put on plays and singing, and that's where this took place. It still is there, like to this day. Drury Lane is still there to this day. And what I think is kind of like close to what I'm talking about is when I think about what we're talking about is like the English New Orleans, kind of, you know? So in Drury Lane around that time, this guy named Frederick Thomas Linwood, he would go door to door and he would peddle his baked goods. And so the story is that he was very competitive. And they say for sure he killed 7 different bakers to take out his like the people that were trying to like get business over him. But the other story is that he killed 15 kids. Now, I looked all over the place, like, why would he kill these kids? And so it was really common at this time to take kids and actually use them as slave labor because, you know, there were no labor laws around that time. And so the story goes that he would tie like a little muffin on a string and he would be in a cave. That's the story. I'm really thinking it was probably like a little storefront or something like that. And he would throw it out and the kid would come in. There were a lot of poor kids at that time. There were things called poorhouses that like if you couldn't pay your bills, they would put you in the poorhouse. Like that's an actual real thing. And so I'm willing to bet that there were a lot of starving children. And he would catch the kids. I'm guessing he probably used them. Now this is all allegedly. This is just what I'm thinking. He would use them and then he would, you know, have them for a while. Maybe there were some more darker, sinister reasons as to why, but I couldn't find it. And then eventually maybe he had to do away with them because someone would come looking for him. But the story is that he killed 15 kids and 7 bakers. Now, the story goes that we can't prove this because nothing's written down. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting. So nothing is written down because around 1665 was the plague. Now, here's something I did not know. I don't know if you guys knew what plague I'm talking about. It's like the big plague, the one that I just sang another nursery rhyme about. Roses, roses, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. So that's a nursery rhyme they used to sing, and it was about the plague because they felt like if they put posies in their pockets, it would stop the plague from getting them. I think it was the Black Death. I'm not sure. It was the great big plague that, you know, everyone talks about. And fun fact, everybody talks about the pandemic, right? And like they call it a pandemic, but honestly, it's just a plague. So we've all been through a plague, and it's nice that we have modern science because back in the day they didn't, and that would bring them to, I think, 1666, which was something called the Great Fire. And the Great Fire was the way they stopped the plague. They basically burned everything. So I think the way that the plague got to everybody was there were like these ticks on the rats, and they ended up finding out that cats helped keep the rats away, and like these ticks had to like get away, and they had to, I mean, there just wasn't really good cleanliness back then. So we'll talk about the plague another day. So they had this Great Fire, and apparently all of the legal stuff burned down with everything else. Now, what's interesting is that they had museums, and they did not burn the museums. So the museums actually had documents talking about the Muffin Man because there ended up being a song or some kind of a game they used to play where basically you would like sit in a circle and you would go, do you know the Muffin Man? I don't know the Muffin Man. And everyone would say that, and then eventually someone would be the Muffin Man, and then everyone would get up and chase down the person that's the Muffin Man. So they had like these like documents and these reasons as to why there was a Muffin Man story. And so even though they say that there's no records of the real Muffin Man, there are in the museums, but they can't take it as like a legal document for some reason. So I did find that out. So Thomas Frederick Linwood was actually the Muffin Man, or allegedly. Now, something that's really interesting is that Thomas Frederick Linwood might be our first serial killer that we ever really know about. Afterwards, in the same area, there was a lady named Mary. I forget her last name, but she ended up adopting kids, and then she would kill the kids. That was pretty common, actually, and they called them coffin babies. That's like a whole nother story. And then she also married a bunch of men and would get life insurance after she killed them. So kind of like a Black Widow type of thing. I think I put in 2 so's in there, so if you heard that, sorry. But what's really cool is that after Mary, there was Jack the Ripper, which I did not know, but 150 years later, after the Muffin Man, Jack the Ripper would make his appearance on the same area as Drury Lanes. And that's kind of crazy. I think that everyone's heard about Jack the Ripper. He's like his own little story. He's a man that apparently killed prostitutes, but what's really interesting is that all the documentation of who he could have been or stuff that was evidence that pointed, it disappeared, and they think that it was the higher ups that covered it up, and that the story was that he had something to do with the crown. I mean, that's just kind of this tale of all of our lives, is that all the really wicked people are always higher up, have a lot of money, millionaires, billionaires. They can afford to be crazy. Well, anyway, that was the thing, is that, the Muffin Man actually was there before Jack the Ripper, and they say that you can't prove it, but I kind of feel like if there is I don't know, they say wherever there is smoke, there is a fire. I don't know if this would apply to it, and also the end of the story is that Frederick ended up dying by choking on a dumpling. Now, the reason that there's so much controversy about this is before I found out about the Muffin Man, a TikToker found out about the Muffin Man, and he went online and he swore up and down that it was real, and everybody freaked out, and there was a huge controversy. I'm telling you that it could be allegedly, so please don't come for me. I just thought it was a really cool thing to learn about, was the Muffin Man. I'm never done being surprised finding about all these nursery rhymes made for children that end up being these horrific real stories about plagues and killings and kidnappings, and I do want to cover that, because I think that I'm going to jump back into the true crime, and the spooky stories kind of help me stay grounded and stay, a little bit more lighthearted, even though we are talking about a serial killer. It was almost 400 years ago, so I don't know, that just kind of helps. But anyway, I hope you really enjoyed my story of the Muffin Man. Tomorrow is going to be Easter, and for my pagan friends out there, happy Astara. And for all the normal people, or not normal, but for all the other people, happy Easter, or happy whatever you celebrate. I hope you enjoyed my tale. Please subscribe, leave a comment, like the video. That helps my algorithm. I seem to attract a certain type of person, so if you really want to write a mean comment, or say something really weird or disturbing, I really push you to find somebody who's got 5 million viewers and just go get them. But you don't have to say mean, horrible, crazy things to me. I'm pretty sensitive. I try to ignore it, but anyway, stay safe and stay spooky. Bye.